Welcome back to another episode of When It Matters. I'm here with a very special guest today. You may know him from his own accounting firm, Boffix, or Ask the Accountant podcast, or you may have seen him on many a panel. I am here with Aaron Patrick. Welcome to When It Matters.
Thank you very much. And such a esteemed guest you've had on this panel as well. So far, I'm honoured to be part of this group. I'm really honoured. It's good.
The honour is ours. It's such a pleasure. And there's so much I want to ask you. I've got a list of things on my phone so I don't forget everything. We've only got 45 minutes.
Yes.
So I want to start with the backstory. Obviously, everyone knows you in your podcast and you've got this incredible media presence in the industry. But let's go back to the beginning. How did it all start and how did you sort of get to where you are today?
By accident. It was accident. So I had this, growing up as a kid, I wanted to be a teacher and I had this all set down. I was going to primary school teacher and kind of work it way up from there. And I went and did work experience. And I don't know about anyone else, but work experience for me, because I wanted to be a teacher, I was like, well, I can't really do work experience as a teacher. I'm already in a school. Like, what am I going to achieve from that? And I was in this random class and I got basically offered the opportunity to go and do work experience at an accounting firm. So I went over there. Wow. Quite enjoyed it, quite liked it. And they offered me a position for at the end of the year. And this is, if you want to, you can come over, do your apprenticeship from here. And that's where it all started. So it was generally by accident. And I think at first it was just a sensible move to go in to do something that, I could use for the rest of my life. That was going in the back of my head, and everything else went with it. So I was thinking to myself, well, at least this is not a wasted opportunity. I can go in, get my apprenticeship. At least I'm going to come out with some skills that's going to let me, I can use for the rest of my life. And then what I was looked into as well as I was going through going through AAT and then going through doing ACA and going through the whole apprenticeship scheme and building my career up, I was then given the opportunity to teach. So I kind of got to scratch that itch, right?
Yeah.
So I know, at first it was, let's see where this career takes me. And now it's just pretty much just taken over my whole career now. So, and this is it. I'm now here as an accountant, and I don't think I would change it for the world, but it was genuinely by accident that I even fell into it.
Yeah, that's so interesting. And you're right, because of course something we're going to talk about later is this kind of education piece that you've managed to make such a big part of your career. And I guess, so obviously you're head of accounts at Boffix. This has been your own practice. But before that, you spent 20 years working for a family butcher. So you were kind of in the small business world before that. What did that kind of teach you about running a small business and having that kind of empathy for small businesses? And did that impact you when you stepped into your accounting
100%.
role?
And that word, that empathy, is one that really stayed with me throughout my whole career. And even now, when I go to bring a new person to any of the businesses at the moment, it's always empathy that we look for first. I can teach anyone to put a set of accounts together or use a piece of software or whatever the role needs to be, but caring about small businesses, caring about why you're doing what you're doing, that's really, really difficult. And it was all learnt from those, being on the ground and understanding. And at the time, I'll always remember that the accountant he had wasn't being proactive with him as the butcher. And it was very much a case of, he was, getting the accounts done and everything else, but there was nothing else there. And as I started to get more confident in the role I was doing and started, having a more say in the business, as he started starting to come towards his retirement and everything else, we were implementing changes that really could have come from the accountant, like implement a POS system so that we could take card payments and streamline the way that we were paying our staff and streamline the way we were paying our suppliers. And it just gave him so much more flexibility. And as he started to struggle more, as he was starting to get to the end of his career as a butcher, and he was starting to look at retirement, he was finding all these systems and solutions and everything else that meant that he was actually keeping going for longer because we were streamlining his work. And that always kind of came to me as, we're more than just accountants. This whole idea is, as in the industry, we've got to become business advisors, because business advisory is what we can offer more. It really can start at that small client, because we as accountants, bookkeepers, oversee so much. We see all this amazing tech. We go to Accountex. We go to all these conventions. We talk to other clients. We've got so much knowledge that we're we're just absorbing from day to day, that we really do have the opportunity to change the small businesses around and help them out just by having a conversation with them, just by finding their pain points. A majority of the time, we can find ways to help them and improve their actual business. And it might not be for a financial benefit. It might just be to help them make it so that they can finish earlier and have a better work-life balance or something like that. Like that's the joy that I've been getting lately as running the practices and building the client base, is we're able to help more and more of those small businesses. And it was all from that being on the ground, understanding the pain points and understanding that we don't have all the answers when you're doing it day to day in any business, right? But having someone who can just kind of come in and sometimes just be a soundboard of, would this work? Would that not work? Or anything like that, is all those small businesses need. And as accountants and bookkeepers, we're the perfect business advisors for that.
I love that. And I feel like you and what you just said really epitomizes why we started the podcast in the first place.
Amazing.
Because we were meeting so many incredible accountants, bookkeepers, fractional advisors.
Yeah.
And you guys just have so much knowledge and wisdom. You see everything. The numbers don't lie. You're there from day one to the end. And yeah, I think what you just said really encapsulates, why we did the podcast in the first place. And actually, we did a recent episode with Amanda C. Watts, who you know is an advisor. In terms of, business advisory is quite topical right now. I think a lot of firms are moving away from just being compliance based. You seem quite ahead of your time with that and with Boffix. When you set up Boffix, what was your, like, first of all, why did you set up your own practice, and what was your kind of vision of what Boffix was going to be, and what does that sort of look like now? Yeah.
So the reason I set Boffix up was because I was in a really good firm, loved what I was doing, but I didn't feel like I was able to implement the changes. It was a top 100 firm back then, but now a top 50 firm. So you can imagine there's quite a lot of growth. And they're obviously quite corporate in that sense. So trying to make any changes was a big ask. Excuse me. And I remember we built this. They called it a digital product, and it was the name of the firm Plus. And I was brought in as someone who loves tech and loves challenging the way that we were doing systems and everything else. It was a really good fit to kind of help them build this new product they were building. And we spent ages building this and making this really glossy front page and everything else. And I always remember being in one of the meetings and going, right, now we've built this front end, now that the information's in, I think we should start thinking about how we're going to deal with the work and how we're going to change the way we work with clients. And I got a big pushback saying, oh, no. No, we're creating a front end to entice them in. We're just going to do it how we've always done it, to deal with them in the yeah. And I was like, that's such a wasted opportunity. Like, there were so many ways we could improve the efficiency, so many ways. And I've always had this thing about, I think I've never really put two and two together, but maybe about the fact you were talking about the butchers there. I've got this thing about, there's got to be a way we can reduce the barrier of entry for small businesses to get support. Like, traditionally, it was always a case of you've just got to pay X amount to your accountant and hope for the best, right? Like that was your option. And normally you'd go down to the golf club or to the pub or whatever it's going to be, and that's how you kind of found the recommendations and went from there. But now in the world what we've got, where you can easily have an accountant the other side of the UK, no problem. There's opportunities if you find the right accountant for you. And I think what that gave me the opportunity was go, right, well, let's build that idea that yes, we can have this fancy digital frontage. That's a given, right? Like that we can build that and we can show that. But what do we do in the back? How do we change the way that we deal with the data? How do we change the way in which we can make that true real-time information for our clients? Because our ultimate goal is that if a client's got a problem, a client's got an issue, or a client needs some advice, that we've always got that data to hand to give that advice. Whereas historically with my old practices, it was, okay, yeah, can you send in the post, a USB drive and hopefully it'll be here in a couple of days. Then we had to upload it, and it was all of that sort of stuff. And it seems like, we take it for granted now, but that's where a lot of the businesses still are. They're still behind in their kind of access to the information they need and access to the data. And hopefully with practices like ours, and there's a lot more out there, and you've had some amazing guests on the pod that's been doing exactly the same. But hopefully we're pushing the industry forward so that we can do more and we can help more. And I think that was my drive for starting Boffix in the first place.
I love that. And I guess, on the tech side, being far more efficient and tech enabled, you're the QuickBooks chap. You've got this incredible personal brand around that and this amazing relationship with them. What first drew you to them as a platform, and how did that kind of come about? Was that quite organic, or did you know when you set up Boffix that this is where you wanted to go? Like, tell us about that.
Yeah, and I got pushback. There's another prominent solution out there that I think does even better in some eyes for people. But for me, it was I'm always one of those where I like to problem solve and I like to solve issues and solve problems. And what I feel with QuickBooks is it gives you the tools to really mold it to whatever you need to. So it may not be, perfect for every scenario at day one, but you're given the tools to actually make it so it can work. Whereas other tools on the market, a lot of them are very much, they're amazing if you stick within their guidelines, right? If you do it in their workflow, you do the way that they want you to do things, you can fly with that system. And for a lot of people, that's fine, and that's exactly what they want, and they want that comfort blanket and they want to do that. But I always want to challenge myself. I want to challenge how we work with businesses, and I want to try and make it so that they can continue to work in the way that they're used to working, and we can adapt around them. And traditionally that would be a really expensive bespoke solution that would cost so much money for clients that it would feel like it's unachievable for them. But actually, if you work within certain parameters and you just give them options and you give them ways in which they can do it, and you work with the tech that's there, you can actually make it so they can continue working the way that they've always worked. And, you can encourage them and even find solutions to make it even more efficient for them. But you can still get the results that you need from it, and you can still get that information out there. And for me, that's why I've always admired QuickBooks, because it there's so much more elements you can start playing around with, and so much more bits you can mold and work with, and that's why I've always gravitated towards them, and it's worked really well, because there's not many people out there championing that brand, so it gave me an opportunity to use that to my advantage, and that's why I'm here now.
That's so smart. And I think that personalization must be so important. Every business is so different, with multiple income streams. I love that. And I guess talking a little bit about the education piece, you're part of Intuit's trainer writer network, which I love. I think this is maybe perhaps how I first came across you, actually, when it was the podcast. And you help educate accountants kind of all over the UK. When it comes to sort of bookkeeping and accounting software, what's the number one thing that you see people kind of struggling with? And how do you kind of help them with that? Yeah,
I think, first of all, the reason I do it is because it backs that itching of being a teacher, right? And going from there. And I think what that gave me was that confidence that when I started to learn to be a trainer and start to, I knew the pain points that people were having, and that's kind of been one of those things. And because I started my own practice and I kind of went through that and was literally on the ground, why can't we reconcile this bank? Or why can't we do this? And banging my head against the wall in certain situations of why the software wasn't doing there. I was learning ways in which we could work around it. And that's where I've always kind of found opportunities, is taking a product and, ripping it apart and finding ways in which you can kind of mold it and work with it. And I think that's always been a real good opportunity for me to flex that muscle of problem solving and go from there. And I think back to the point of what people struggle at the most is they see the software, and I think sometimes it's very much of there's a fear factor there, right? And because we're dealing with financial data, because we're dealing with quite sensitive information at some point, I feel like there's this fear factor to try and do things, try and put an idea into place, and try maybe approach an issue in a certain particular way. And I think as accountants and bookkeepers, we've been traditionally we've been told, right, we have to follow this guideline, we have to do it this way. To every debit there must be a credit, and everything has to be reconciled, and all this, that, and the other. And for fundamental points we have to follow those rules, but we don't have to follow them exactly to the T. And the biggest kind of reward I've always had when I'm teaching is seeing that spark with someone when they go, oh, okay, so that you're doing it this way, or you're doing it that way. Wait a minute, if I also did it that way, could I do that with this client, and could I do it with that client? And then you start seeing that ticking, and it clicks, exactly. And suddenly you start seeing this as not just a black and white tool and you have to do it this way and get from there. But actually, if you if you add this or you add that or you try something a bit different, you're going to get better results out of it. And I love seeing that process and seeing that. And it doesn't happen overnight. It doesn't happen straight away. But that satisfaction of seeing someone, like you said, click at that point, and then they get the opportunity to help their clients or help their team or whatever the pain point they've got is, that's why I do it. And it is, that's the fundamental issue we have, I think, in the industry at the moment, where we're trying to take that traditional aspect of it and bring it to the modern world. And it's going to take time. It's not going to happen overnight, but it's amazing to see those kind of pockets of groups like starting to click and starting to understand and starting to see that it doesn't have to be the way we've always done it. And the industry as a whole is definitely benefiting because of it.
Yeah, I'm so intrigued because I think, I mean, obviously, from mesh, we come from like insurance, so antiquated, and the kind of pace of adopting kind of new tech is really quite slow. And when I've been when I was like Accountex, for example, where you were as well, it really struck me that the pace of adoption of kind of cloud accounting and now obviously AI is a lot faster than I would expect of such a traditional industry. Is that the case, do you think? Or have I got this quite like idealistic view because I've been going to these conferences with the most tech forward people? Like, yeah, there's
definitely a part of that. I mean, I'm really lucky in my communities that I'm part of and everything else. I think we gravitate towards the same sort of people, right? So a lot of the people I talk to on a day-to-day basis, we're challenging it. We're trying to adopt as fast as we can. It can't come soon enough, right? Like you're talking about AI there. There's so much of stuff that, I've seen and I can't wait to be implemented and everything else. But you're right, as an industry, I think we are still so slow to adopt. And it isn't the fault of the industry, it's the fault of the profession. Like there's so much compliance out there, there's so much red tape, there's so much that we have to consider. I mean, the second that ChatGPT dropped, the first question was, should we be using this tool? And it's right to ask that question, right? Like we've got to be responsible with it. But because we have to ask that question, because we have to wait for our governing bodies to give the thumbs up or the thumbs down, or tell us we've got to put this clause in our engagement letter, or we've got to go to our insurance company and ask for this particular cover, you know what I mean? Like that's what holds our industry back. And we're an industry that is primed on on the calendar, and there's peaks and troughs in our whole year of you can't talk to an accountant in January, right? They just don't exist. They're just pinned to the desk. So finding times to adopt and change things and move things around and all that is always a real challenge. But I do think we're definitely going in the right direction. I think that group that you've seen there is just growing and growing and growing and growing, and more people are jumping on that early adoption bandwagon now, and it's for the better of the industry.
Yeah. And I guess how are you and Boffix using it? I'm quite intrigued to know how your approach to it, because I think of you as you're so tech forward. Like I think actually the first time I met you in person, you were helping me with the tech issue I was having with a mic. So I know that you're, really, really is a real strength of yours. Talk me through your kind of relationship with AI and how you use it professionally and also like personally as well. I'm also kind of intrigued.
Great question, because especially when we were at an event, same at that Manchester event, I was really lucky to be hosting a podcast beforehand, the day before. And I'll always remember one of the questions I got thrown from the audience was, all right, you lot are talking about AI and all this, because obviously that was the topic of conversation. What else do we talk about in the accounting industry at the moment? That or MTD, you take it whichever one it's going to be. But when we were talking about AI, it was always going to be, and I was prepared for the question, it was always going to be, well, what do you actually use it for? Right? You talk a good game, but actually what you're using it for day to day. And what I've been using it for more than anything is just trying to, and I challenge anyone who's listening to look at their day-to-day work, especially if you're in a position like I am where you're running practices and you're trying to look at that holistic view, and you're trying to get a grasp of the important things like capacity planning and trying to get new clients, all that lot. And I challenge myself to look at what I'm doing and what am I doing repetitively, and is there a way that we can set an agent to automatically do that repetition for us? Is there a way to go through from there? And the two key aspects I would say for anyone to look at using it to kind of test it out and cut your teeth on it is, and this one was the one that kind of opened my eyes more than anything, was, well, I've been asking vendor A or vendor B to implement this solution for me, right? And it's frustrating because in my mind, why don't they just turn on this feature? And you're having this naivety, don't you, that these vendors just sat there and they're just twiddling their thumbs and everything else. But obviously they've got such, their roadmaps are probably 2 years in advance at this point. So you asking for a feature of For example, a reminder being set out automatically is something that towards mere mortals we're like, well, why don't they just turn, surely there's a switch, right? And they just turn the switch on for us. And I've been challenging myself to go, right, well, if I wait for the vendor to implement that, I could be waiting a year, 2 years, whatever it's going to be. Why don't I just test this agent thing that everyone's talking about? Is there a way I could basically mimic that feature that I'm looking for to be able to actually do it now? And that's exactly what I've been doing. So I've been, responsibly setting up agents, responsibly setting up user permissions and everything else. But I've been going, well, I've always wanted it to go in and automatically send VAT returns reminders out for me. So that's what I did. I noticed that we were spending X amount of time doing that process. So because it was repetitive, that's an easy one for you to try with an agent. So you get the agent there, you teach it what you want to do, you go back and forth, you're going to fail the first time, you're going to fail the third time, you're going to fail the fourth time. But at some point it'll click, as that's the process I need to get that to work. And again, it's that clicking mechanism, right? So once it's clicked, you go, okay, that was relatively straightforward and I can see the benefit I've got from there. What else can I do from there? So I always challenge people to look at that and try and use agents to try and go from there. And the best resource on the world is YouTube. Like, YouTube channels out there that's
your interesting. Okay,
I've done a video on how to do that process. There's other people out there doing that process. And then my other one with AI is trying to find ways in which the vendors can use it to actually help, instead of just ticking a box, say, oh, we've got AI and this is what it is. Don't forget about us, we've got AI. You want to try and challenge them to bring something in that's actually worthwhile. And my favorite use case I've seen at the moment is those pain points, like a bank statement, for example, right? Client will give you a bank statement. Traditionally, we'd have to go through, tick it off line by line. Yep, that's all there. We're good. Now, AI, you can upload it. It's going to read it through for you, tell you what's missing, put those transactions if you want for you. Those are those wow factors that we need. And we need to keep pushing back to the vendors and going, look, you think we want these, bits that are going to tell us this or tell us that, or go down analytic routes or anything like that. But actually, no, what we want is we want them to just take away those pain points. And I'm loving the fact that the vendors are starting to give us that enough now. And the more of those wow factors we have, the more we can start passing it to the rest of the industry. And they go, okay, now I'm interested. Now I understand why this AI in this product is worthwhile. So I feel like we're on that cusp now of just making enough wow factors in there that people are going to start taking notice. And once they start taking notice, more things will start coming from there.
I love that. And I think that's, so important to start with the pain point and then build according to that, rather than like adding AI for the sake of it and then working backwards. I think that's such a common mistake.
And it has to be driven from the user, right? Because so often the vendors are thinking of pain points, thinking of solutions for AI, thinking of ways in which they can implement it. And sometimes they'll hit gold, but sometimes they won't, right? And it's that sometimes they won't. It's just a waste of resource. So if you as the user can try and talk to your vendors, try and give them that push and try and say, look, here's a big pain point of mine. I've got a feeling that AI could help this. That's where they should be putting that resource into. And then again, it will accelerate it. It'll get more people excited, and more people will start embracing it then.
Yeah, and I think something that really strikes me as we're chatting is that you and also AI have this thing in common. It seems like you really kind of subvert the norms and kind of break the rules and the kind of traditional paths, whether that be with Boffix and kind of adopting QuickBooks to your podcast. Like, out of interest, like where does that come from? And did you have like particular mentors that you were following, or was this just completely, out of your own mind? Do you see what I mean?
Yeah,
like
100%.
Where does this come from?
That's a brilliant question. I know there's definitely been no mentors that's kind of pushed it for. I've always been a geeky guy anyway. Like, for me, watching YouTube is the best way to decompress at the end of the day, right? And I can watch anything from a vlog or a podcast to someone just explaining how they've done something, right? I've just got the curiosity. And I think it's always to have that, like, I love Apple, I love that Steve Jobs effect and all that sort of stuff. So I think it's that sort of mentality that's kind of pushed me to go, well, if it's worked to that extent in Apple, surely we can replicate something, right? If that, because it's all about attention to detail, right? It's always trying to solve those problems. It's trying to wow and trying to, make the customer feel like they're, that they enjoy whatever your product or service is, right? And I feel like if you keep adapting and trying to push that, and the only way you can make them wow is by finding ways to challenge whatever that pain point is, whatever that issue is, whatever that problem. And I feel like that's that's what my role in whatever hat I'm wearing. I've got multiple hats at the moment, but my biggest role that I can ever bring to whatever it is, if it's the accountancy practice or the training or the podcast or, you know, the social media company, whatever it's going to be, it's about trying to problem solve and trying to find solutions and trying to push it forward. And I think if I keep doing that and I keep putting that as my job, my role, it just keeps me grounded, right? It gives me a purpose. It gives me a reason to keep getting up every day, and, you know, whatever challenge I've got to do, we can keep going from there. So I think that's what it's related to. But yeah, who I've been, you know, who's mentored me to there, generally there's no one. And I don't think there is. I think we've all got to do it in our own way, right? Like, we've all got to find our own, and we've all got to, and it all came down to being frustrated in that old position of, but surely there's a better way. Like if we go back to the story where I said, well, you know, it was a glossy front and a, you know, a traditional back end. I knew deep down that there was a better way, and it's almost like I wanted to prove to them or prove to the, you know, the industry that there is another way of doing it. And I feel like that's kind of where it gets driven from.
Where it comes from. Yeah, and I the mentorship is a really interesting thing, because I think we're hearing a lot about how less people are going into the accounting profession. And so I think, for example, having something like Ask the Accountant podcast is such an amazing way for people to get not necessarily direct mentorship, but get that kind of educational piece. Yeah. So let's talk about that. How, obviously everyone knows about the pod, but how did it begin, and where did, like, was this something that you'd planned for a really long time? Did you suddenly have a bit of a brainwave? Like, how did this begin?
Yeah, so it was we were at a accounting event called Countex, and me and the co-host Johan, we sat having a beer at the end of it, like decompressing over it all and all this and the other, and we were both kind of like, well, wouldn't it be great if we could talk on stage about, and it was just before AI, and we were like, oh, it'd be great if we could talk and talk on there. I was like, but realistically, how are we gonna get noticed? Like, what do we have to do? And that was where the conversation of, well, you know, if we put together like a podcast every year, every month or every week, or however it's going to work. And that's where the conversation started. And I'll always remember that first kickoff meeting, and naively we're like, well, obviously we're going to target getting new clients, and we're going to target the accountants, and we're going to target this. And like, okay, yeah, we'll figure it out. Episode 1 goes live, and it's just accountants tuning in. And it's like, we've missed the ball here, haven't we? We should just be like, you know what they say in social media, right? Like, you've just got to give the audience what they want, right? And the audience were wanting just that accountant advice. So in reality, we should never have called ourselves Ask the Accountant. I think that's the wrong name to go with, but it's too late now. But the idea was that we can give back here, right? And over time, it was like, well, what can we? What are we doing this for? What's our purpose? And we had to pivot over time, and you know, really, and for us, it's, how do we give back to the industry? How do we get people, like you said, interested in the industry? How do we tell people that, you know what, there's so much cool tech out there. Like, you should be using this laptop because it's got this feature, and or you should be using this software and it's such a broad topic. And most of it is, okay, me and Johan, we've had a problem in our practice and we've had to solve it one way or another. So let's talk about us solving it. And again, it was, you know, it gave us that platform then. And we were able to talk on stage at Accountex. We'd be able to kind of move it from there. And what we've learned over time is, because we've started to really, you know, go into what the community wants, is we've started to build up different brands out of it as well. And it's become a whole monster of a network now, where we talk about different topics, and we talk about different vendors, and we have different shows for different events. And we're creating this network where we can just celebrate the accounting industry. And now we go to events and we get the opportunity to do podcasts like this and talk to people who've never been on a podcast before, and give them their first opportunity, and, you know, gives them a chance to, it's our way of saying thank you for listening to us, right? Thank you for supporting us, because they can come along, they can have a podcast while we're at an event, and, you know, they get something tangible from that they can take away and share on socials and all that sort of stuff. So yeah, over time we've honed what we've done, but I really think that it was it was done by accident, really. Like, we wanted to find a way to talk at shows and stuff like that. But actually, because we noticed so early on that who we were talking to and what our audience was, we're able to pivot it and then, you know, build it into what it is today. So it's something that I think a lot of business owners and everyone can take from, because it's that being able to pivot, like understanding what their target audience, understanding what they're trying to say, and what you won't get it right first time, but over time you'll hone it, you'll figure it out, and that's when you start reaping the rewards. And I think everyone out there should try doing something like this, like a social media campaign or something where you will fail at the beginning, but then you'll learn and you'll understand, you'll hone it. And I think that's a real good business skill to have, and have that ability to be able to be agile. And I think that's what we've learned more than anything, is we've got that agility now, and we've been able to put it into not only our practices but other projects we've got coming up. And Johan's got is a co-owner of a software thing, and he's using the skills from there, and it's all
interconnected. And
a lot of people ask, why do you do it, and what it is, but it's we're learning every single day that we do the podcast, because we're learning about how to make give back to that community and serve the community, and it's been a really rewarding process.
Yeah, and I think I love how you've kind of sort of democratized kind of making podcasts and giving accountants more of a media presence by having these like pop-ups and stuff at the conferences. It's such a cool idea. And I think what's really struck me when I've listened to episodes, which I love, the last one I listened to was with Tim at Guernsey, which I absolutely loved. You're such a wonderful host. You're so good. I think it really allowing people to open up. Everyone seems very comfortable around you. Is that something that you were kind of great at from the beginning, or did you kind of hone that did you just hone that over time? Like, what was it like becoming, a media host, which is, quite different from the accountant role?
Yeah, 100%. I think you have to be a sponge, right? I learn from people like yourself. Like, I'm learning today, like how to and you've got to continue to adapt and evolve, right? You've got your style, so I'm thinking about it like, should that, and while I'm talking, it's going through the back of my head, and it's like, well, how should I be using that? That's a good way of phrasing that question, or that sort of stuff, right? And I think for me, it's because I consume so much YouTube, so much podcast anyway, that you kind of learn that there's a reason you're gravitating to X podcast over Y podcast, right? You may fall off a particular podcast because they were doing it, and if you start doing it in a more kind of critical, almost like you treat every piece of media that you consume as a bit of a case study, right? And that's what I've started doing, and it sometimes ruins the enjoyment from time to time, but I've got that so geeky part of me. I'm like, wonder what camera they're using, and that's an interesting cut they've got there. And okay, so they've chosen to have this angle. Like first thing I did when I walked in here was, oh, interesting, so you're using this, and wow, okay, we're using these mics, and I think that's where it comes from. It's that I'm so interested in how other people are doing it and how they've achieved it. And you've just got to be that, right? You've just got to be that sponge. You've got to learn from what others are doing, because there's always going to be someone who's done it before you. And maybe they've done it brilliantly or maybe not, but you're going to know, because either you've gravitated to that or you haven't. And you've just got to try and take that. And my final bit of advice to anything like that is, we were talking it downstairs, is that whole process of editing. Like, when I edited my first piece of content, that was a game changer for me. It was like, why am I doing this? Why am I doing that? And I'm still not perfect. I'm still got to, learn not to do ums and ahs and all that sort of stuff. But when I did my first ever piece of content, they always say, don't you, your first bit of content is your worst ever piece of content. Yeah. But it's only your worst ever piece of content if you edit it yourself and really hone and look into it. I think if you just kind of, pass it to someone else and just launch it and hope for the best, you're never going to learn from it. Yeah. But if you can just take that time to absorb it and understand it, that's when you're going to learn. You need to have some energy there. Or why did you just not answer that person's question? You just moved on too soon, right? You need to be critical of the work you've done.
That's so interesting as well, because I think with our podcast that we're making, obviously it can be quite time consuming, right? You've got to go back, and when I first watched the first one I ever hosted back, I was like, oh my god, there's so much. I noticed that I always say I love that after everything. It's so annoying. I was like, I need to stop doing that. But my boss and I were talking like, oh, should we get an AI to watch it and pull out hooky things for shorts? And we were like, no, because otherwise you just don't learn. Yeah. And also it's such a human thing, having a conversation. Maybe this is the one area that AI can't touch. I don't know.
It'll give you some ideas, but you're right. Yeah. For you to progress and to learn, everything you've got to do yourself, right? Like anything else. And you've got to keep massaging that muscle like anything else in life. Like that's how you're going to get better at it. And it is just repetition, isn't it?
The craft. And when you're doing your panels and you're kind of being the interviewer interviewee rather as you are today, do you find that as easy as being a host? Like what feels more natural to you, or are you kind of just chilled in front of the camera, whatever way?
It's different hats for different causes, right? So and it's like that with every aspect of my career at the moment. There's so many different aspects and so many different parts of it that you've just got to learn how to adapt for each one, and it is an adaptation, right? You've just got to be able to go, right, well, this worked, that didn't work. And again, as long as you look back and you criticize, and you will be your own worst critic, right? As long as you go back and look at it, that's when you start. And then you'll start feeling more comfortable each hat that you put on. So if I'm a host, it's this hat. And if I'm not a host, it's another hat. And the more you do it, the more repetition. And as long as you keep going back to it, that's how you come from there.
Nice. And I guess you also have so many different formats of the podcast, which I love. I mean, the cool locations one is such a cool idea. Also must be so fun to shoot. Such a nice excuse
100%.
to go around the country. How do you come up with these kind of new, fresh ideas? I actually, in the one I watched with Tim, use like the Office theme music. So fun. Like, how do you come up with these new ideas? Do you and Johan like sit and brainstorm, or do things just strike you and you go, oh my gosh, we should try this? Or
Dog walking.
Really?
Yeah. You go on a dog walk. And what will happen is we've now got 8 different formats at the moment. I would have come up with 30 plus at some point. And what we've got a really good dynamic is I'll come up with this crazy idea, and they'll just, either it'll get implemented properly and it come out and it's a success, or we get told straight away that's a ridiculous idea. And that's how it comes, right? And that's how you evolve. Like my favourite idea we've ever come up with was the Top Trumps card. So the idea of us is to go, right, if you want to come on our podcast, we're going to create a Top Trump card for you. And it's a collectible that people will want to pick up and sign in it. And that was on a dog walk. And I remember like just putting into the WhatsApp group, got this really crazy idea. It's probably going to be one you're going to say no to. But what about if we did Top Trump cards? And it evolves from there. So yeah, you've just got to have that confidence to get. And again, what's the success rate there? 20% of my ideas have come true. So, like obviously, but you've got to have that, conviction to at least air it, talk it through, have it, and having a good team around you like we have, they're very good at going, that one's got legs, this one hasn't, and can go from there. And then you at that point it's worth putting the investment in, time, money, whatever it's going to be. But there's always an investment into something, any idea, right? So just having that sounding board first to go, that's right or that's wrong. Like on our pod at the moment, we're looking to launch this new subscription service, right? But the first group that we ever thought of about seeing if that's right or wrong is the community themselves. Like we asked them on the pod, look, this is what we're thinking of doing, full cards on the table, what's your opinion? And we've just been inundated with like, try this, do that. And that's going to be, going to deem how that's going to go going forward. And I'm really confident it's going to be a success because it's driven by the people who actually want to consume it and actually want to utilize it. So yeah, I think ideas and everything else, I think just have that confidence to at least air them out. What's the worst that can happen if you air it out, right? And just find those people who are good to listen to. And in the accounting industry, it's collaboration over competition every single time. So you're always going to find a group that will want to listen to them, and that's the best thing about it.
Oh, amazing. And I guess, when does the subscription content coming out? Is that
any day now? Yeah, we're just trying to we've got Top Trumps available, we've got all sorts of stuff. But yeah, again, we had one idea and we've come to this idea, and it's because the community's like, how about this? What about this? Could you do this? And yeah, we kind of deliver it from there.
Amazing. Well, when that comes out, we will link. We'll chat about it. We'll link to it or something. And I guess honestly, I could talk about podcasts and everything with you all day. But I know we're kind of at time. So my last question is: we've talked about AI, we've talked about tech, automation, QuickBooks, and then building a media presence, becoming an advisory-based business. Where do you see overall the kind of industry evolving? What are you most excited about, and what's next for you and for Boffix? Yeah.
Oh, I love that question. So first of all, shout out to the nice top that I'm wearing. The merch, the all merched up. It's nice to be sat in a podcast and because we tried this as well. We tried doing t-shirts, but we went down the personalised route. The first ever Cool Friends has their own personalised shirt, and then we just couldn't keep up with demand. But what do I think to the industry? I think AI is going to be a positive force for us, and we have to embrace it. And I was talking to this about the other day about I got really lucky to get behind the scenes and see a product before it was launched and give kind of my feedback on it and everything else. And my ultimate thing was, because they were so AI driven, they were worried about that. Are we going to be worried that people are going to think it's taking jobs and we're going down that conversation, all that sort of stuff? I says, no. This is going to give back time to accountants and bookkeepers and business advisors, and it's going to give us an opportunity to do more. Back to that very start, like why did I care about being an accountant? Because I want to help the small businesses, right? I want to find time to help them, and I'm only going to get that time. My team's only going to get that time if we embrace AI to help us do the deliverables much, much quicker. And if we can get those deliverables done quicker, more efficiently, more accurately, which is what AI can give us and what AI can unlock for us, then we're going to have so much more time to do the stuff that we enjoy loving. I've yet to find an accountant out there. Well, that's a lie. There's a couple of accountant bookkeepers out there, but very few of them love filing back returns. What they love is helping small businesses, helping the opportunity to, implement a new system or a new piece of tech or a new piece of solution, or, implement some problem solving. That's what we love doing as accountants, bookkeepers and business advisors. That's what gets us out of bed. And we've got to accept that AI is going to help us be able to do that more for more clients and make more of an impact. And that's got to be the takeaway, that the future of accounting and bookkeeping, that's what it looks like. And that's what I'm really excited for, because we're so good at it. And we just either we don't have the confidence because we don't do it enough, and back to, repetition's the best way of massaging that muscle, or in most circumstances, we just don't have the time. And I just feel like AI and everything out with all the cool tech that's come in is going to give us that opportunity to go out there and deliver and do more good. And that's got to be the best part about being an accountant bookkeeper.
What a perfect note to end on. Aaron, thank you so much. I've absolutely loved this one. I love how we've been able to go quite deep and really get into you and your background. I will link to Ask the Accountant and all the subscriber content coming. But thank you so much. It's been such a pleasure to have you on the pod.
Thank you very much. I've loved every minute of it, and what an amazing salary you got.